Today on Inspired Money.
When you go to the gym, no matter how fit you are, I think most people will think of improving the shell, the outside part of you. Obviously, there's health benefits to the inside as well, but it seems more like of an outside thing, and it's hard to really understand how to improve the insides, namely the brain. And so people just don't even think about that there are exercises and things you can do to try to improve the fitness of your brain, just like you are with your entire body.
This is episode 103 with four-time U.S. memory champion Nelson Dellis. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker, welcome back. If it's your first time listening, welcome. Here at Inspired Money, we want to help each other to live richer lives, make a greater impact, and together make the world a better place. One way to achieve these things is to improve your money mindset. And today, we're actually going to talk about your mind. Do you misplace your car keys? Have trouble remembering people's names? Can you remember all of your passwords? If you're like me, you cannot. So I got really excited when I stumbled upon a documentary on Netflix called Memory Games. Have you seen it? Here, check out this clip.
Try to think of something you do that doesn't involve memory, and I guarantee you can't. I started doing research what this memory world is really about. One of the first things I heard about was a memory championship. Memory is to be human. This is what makes life meaningful, is memory.
It's about these really cool competitions. Imagine competitors from all over the world demonstrating incredible memory feats, like memorizing the order of a deck of cards in 20 to 30 seconds, matching images of 150 faces to names in 15 minutes, or being able to recall 700 numbers in just 5 minutes. What if this ability is not something that you're born with, but something that anyone can learn to do? Today's guest is Nelson Dellis. Born with an average memory, today he's a four-time USA memory champion. I'm really excited to sit down with one of the leading competitive memorizers in the world. In this episode, you'll learn, should we be training our brains? The system for encoding numbers for impressive memory recall. And we'll even talk a little bit about the business of memory because Nelson left his day job to follow his passion. Now let's get inspired with Nelson Dellis. Nelson, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
Oh, money. I guess thinking about it, my dad, who's always been a very businessman, finance guy, he's very strict with his numbers and keeps a big track of them. He had us keep this little book with all our expenses and with our allowances and stuff. I think we were living in France at the time. I got my first allowance, so I would get like 100 francs a month or something. Maybe it was less. I have to think about that. But either way, he would get very angry at us if we spent some of it and didn't write down what we spent it on. So I was very bad at that, but that's my first memory of having to manage money.
That's funny because not only are you, it's one thing to get your allowance, but you learned the importance of accounting as a kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I'm so excited to talk to you. You're a four-time USA memory champion, and I understand that you weren't always like this award-winning memory guy. You were motivated to explore memory training after your grandmother had Alzheimer's. Were you really close to your grandmother?
I grew up with only one set of grandparents. And, my grandfather on that side was special to me in his own way. And then so was my grandmother. They kind of each had their own special place for me. And my grandmother was all about kind of this tough love discipline thing. And, it was still a loving relationship, but I have very fond memories of our relationship. And that's why it made it so hard when she kind of lost her memories of me and everything. And I guess all because of that, that's what led me to discover memory.
I learned about you because of the Netflix documentary Memory Games. And in it, you said memory is to be human. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I've often been pinned with that question is, what does memory mean? And I always kind of go back to that. I mean, it's not something I've really thought too hard on to define in case that question comes up, but that just seemed like the natural answer because, I think it's what sets us apart. Obviously, other animals have memory, but it's how we, use that in terms of moving forward or using that as our experience. We are made up of memories, and it decides for us what we do in the future, how we respect the past, and how we live in the present. And I can't think of any more direct meaning for what a human is than that, living in those kind of three time spaces.
And you saw that firsthand in your grandmother as she was deteriorating and losing her memory.
Exactly. And it hurts to even think that my grandmother wasn't human at some point, but that's essentially what was being stripped of her as she lost that part of her that was human, You're
really big on physical exercise. I mean, you seem to be like really big into self-improvement and then exercising your mind. Like a lot of people do go to the gym and they think about like physical fitness, but I think many of us kind of take it for granted and don't look at our brain and memory as something that we need to train.
When you go to the gym, no matter, how fit you are, I think most people will think of you're improving the shell, the outside part of you. Obviously there's health benefits to the inside as well. But it seems more like of an outside thing. And it's hard to really understand how to improve the insides, namely the brain. And so people just don't even think about that there are exercises and things you can do to try to improve the fitness of your brain, just like you are with your entire body.
How did you discover competitive memory competitions and sort of enter that world?
My first thoughts were, okay, I want to do something to improve my brain. Obviously, I didn't have Alzheimer's or anything like that. I was young, and I'm still young. But I was thinking more along the lines of some kind of habits I could build over the years, and eventually when I get older, have some kind of protection or strength so that the same thing doesn't happen to me. But I still didn't know kind of how I was going to do that. Memories kind of felt like a very vague thing to measure. But luckily I found this championship and that had all sorts of records and results that I could aim for and disciplines to practice. And that kind of was like, okay, that was a good kind of game plan, is maybe I can form my daily practice towards that championship setup. And that'll give me some kind of things to measure it by. And it actually was a great thing to go by, because it led me to obviously win these championships, but then also to have measurable improvements over the course of months.
Did you sign up for a contest right away, or did you start with books and researching online?
Actually, yeah, I signed up very soon, probably sooner than I should have. In 2009, the championship I signed up for and was not ready. I maybe trained a couple weeks beforehand. It was all new to me, but I just wanted to throw myself in. And it was actually a good experience doing that, because it gave me more experience the next year, where I actually did amazingly well and came in third place. I was obviously training and reading books and doing my own kind of trial and error training on top of that, but pushing myself into competition mode very early from the start was a big motivating factor.
Are you always like a ready, fire, aim kind of guy?
I know there's people out there who like to be very well prepared before they try anything serious. And I get that. But for me, I'm more of let me throw myself into the deep end for a few reasons. One, you get that experience, whether it's positive or negative. It's most likely going to be negative, but I think that's almost a better experience than a positive experience because you can pull so much from it. And it also gives you a great lay of the land. You can see what you really have to do, what it really is like to be a part of it, so that next year when you go for it again, you don't have to worry about kind of the newbie jitters. It's kind of like a top secret mission. You're just trying to figure everything out so that you can really attack it the next time.
So in that first competition, what were the negatives? Were you lost after only preparing for a couple weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I was okay. I think I finished middle of the pack, but some part of you is like, well, maybe I am better than most of the people, but I wasn't. I was in the middle. So there was that knock of reality. But then also I met all sorts of people there who were seasoned veterans. Ben Pridmore, who's an English world champion, was visiting that time, and I got to talk with him for 5 minutes. And I think those 5 minutes were honestly some of the most inspirational minutes of my early career there. Had I not met him, I don't know if I would have been so motivated after that to really go all the way in. I remember him sitting in front of me. There were a few of us talking to him, and I was like, oh, because you could memorize a deck of cards in about 30 seconds at the time. And that was I think he had the world record. And I shuffled a deck of cards, gave it to him, and he glanced at 10 to 15 cards in a few seconds and put it down and started rattling them off. And I was just floored. And I was like, wow, I want to do that. And I think just even that moment was a huge thing for me. So you never know what you're going to get. It was a negative in the sense that I knew that I had a lot of work to do and that I wasn't as good as I thought, but that ended up being what I needed,
It sounds like you have a lot of fun with this, impressing people. To the layman, it does seem like magic when somebody memorizes, a deck of 52 cards in 30 seconds or can just memorize a series of numbers. Before you started, there was a time when it seemed magical to you. And now that you've put in the work, and it sounds like a lot of work, what is your viewpoint? Is it magic?
I mean, it depends what you think magic is. I mean, behind every magic display, there's some kind of trick or gimmick, right? And in a sense, you can argue that what I do is some kind of trick or gimmick, but it's only a trick or gimmick in my own mind. It's not a trick or gimmick in the sense that I'm secretly writing the information and cheating you of this display of memory. The gimmick is happening all inside my mind. And in the end, does it really matter what's happening in my mind? If I can look at something for a few minutes or seconds and then do my process in my mind, the gimmick, whatever, and then later be able to recall it from memory, no matter how I did it, I'm recalling it from memory. So gimmick or not, it's actually improving my memory. So yeah, in a way, it's kind of a bit of fun trickery. But when you look at what's going in, as if my head is a box, right? And information goes into the box and then later can come out of it. Doesn't matter what's going on in there. If it's coming in and being able to come out, then that's all that matters. And that's the impressive thing. So
let's break that cardinal rule of magic, never explaining how it works.
Yeah, that's the other key difference about memory techniques is magicians usually don't tell their secrets. Memory experts will happily tell you their secrets.
Now that you understand it and it's sort of demystified, are you in awe? Because you've seen a lot of progress made even in 10 years. From the time that you started, I think fastest time that someone could memorize a deck of cards compared to now. People keep pushing the memory envelope too, right?
Yeah, and even you think back 10 years ago where you're like, wow, I don't really think anybody can get faster. This is the limit. But here we are 10 years later, and the limit is not what I ever would have thought it was. It's 12 seconds now. And even now, I'm I don't think it can get any faster, but who knows? In 10 more years, people might be getting 8 seconds, 7 seconds, which is unfathomable. But yeah, I'm still amazed by it. Even sometimes when I do a reasonably fast thing, I look at it and I'm just like, wow, I can't believe that my mind can do this. It's what's even crazier is that this is teachable, and people that I've taught this had horrible memories, and here they are being able to do these incredible feats. And it's just makes you think, what what our brains are really capable of. We're never really shown that potential from early on. It's a shame.
Can you humor us and give us a demonstration?
Let's do this. This is an easy one to do. If you have a pen and piece of paper in front of you, maybe write down a 30-digit number. You can just make up whatever. If you want to think of 3 phone numbers, 10 digits long, that's fine. And then what I'll have you do.
So single digits.
Yeah. So that
like
altogether it's 30 digits long. Yeah. And what you can do is tell me those digits 1 digit per second, and orally, obviously. And I will sit over here and try to memorize them and tell them to you forwards and backwards afterwards. Just let me know when you're ready.
Okay, sure, I'm ready.
Okay, and then we'll go over what I'm doing, but try to keep a 1 second pace, kind of like the speed. 1, 2, 3, something like that. Is that cool?
That's cool.
All right, go for it.
8, 0, 1, 1, 2, 8, 8, 4, 2, 4, 1, 7, 7, 5, 0, 1, 3, 9, 3, 6, 3, 9, 9, 2, 6, 1, 8, 6, 7, 3.
Okay, let me just review that in my mind. Okay. All right. So starting from the beginning, 80112884 24177501 39363992618673. Yeah?
That's correct.
Yeah. And then backwards, just go backwards there. 37 hold on. 68162993 63931057 714248821108.
That is correct. Yes, that blows everybody's mind. Lift the veil and tell us what's going on inside your head.
Yeah. So the way it works is, and this is kind of the general process for everything that I memorize, is I take some information, in this case, the numbers you said to me, and I encode them into pictures. So for numbers, for example, I have a system where every 2 digits is a person or an action. And this is something I just learned so that whenever I hear numbers, I'm ready to go and I have a picture ready for it, because oftentimes a number may not have any meaning, maybe unless it reminds you of a sports athlete's jersey number or something like that. But for every 2-digit number, that's not going to happen. You may have 1 or 2, but that's it. So the idea of a system that you create beforehand for numbers, at least, is so that you're prepared for any possible pair of digits. So as I was receiving those numbers from you, I was turning them into images, and then I store them in a memory palace. So I think of a place that I visited in the past or that I've lived, and I imagine those people and actions, which are represented by the numbers, doing things around that space in an order, in a pathway through it. So for example, the first 4 digits were 8011, and that translates to 80, which is Santa Claus, and 11, which is playing tennis. So Santa Claus is playing tennis, and that I placed that image in the lobby of a hotel in Kathmandu that I've traveled to a few times. And so there's fat old Santa Claus swinging a tennis racket, in the entryway. And then I walk in my mind to the counter of the lobby desk, which is kind of nearby. And there's the next 4 digits, which is my sister kind of slamming her feet on a flat screen TV and cracking it. And that is 2884. And then I move over to the lobby couch, which is nearby, kind of a waiting area. And there is Kobe Bryant flying an airplane. So that's 24, that's Kobe, and 17, that's the pilot. And so I keep doing this for the remaining digits as I navigate around the space. And then when you ask me to recall it, all I'm doing is mentally taking a stroll back through that place and then decoding the images to numbers.
That encoding, how long did that take you to really start getting the hang of it so that you could do it pretty quickly?
Yeah, I remember the first few times. First of all, you got to decide what all the digits will be. That takes a bit of time to fill in the whole kind of chart, right? It's 100 numbers. And now my systems are even more complex, but this is what it was when I first started. And then being able to do it as you hear the numbers or read the numbers, I remember having to think like, oh, shoot, what did this one represent? And then I'd have to go study it again. It wasn't very fluid at the beginning, which is normal. It's like a language that I've learned, right? So over time and practice and studying, these numbers now are so instinctive to me that I don't even think about the translation anymore. They just are what they represent.
So 80 is always Santa Claus.
Yeah. And there's a reason why the system I use was something called the Dominic System, where you basically turn into each digit 0 through 9 into a letter. And in the case of the Dominic System, it's almost entirely based on the position of the letter in the alphabet. So an 8 is H, because it's the 8th letter of the alphabet. And then a 0 is actually, in this case, we're going for simplicity. It's an O, because it looks like an O. So 80 is ho, right? In this case, that makes me think of ho, 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 Santa Claus. And there's my person.
Got it. And then for 80, do you also have an action that you can associate as part of like this vocabulary?
Yeah, exactly. So, and that part's easy because you just, once you have the person, you just think of an action associated with that person. So Santa Claus, he's always just laughing, ho, 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 a jolly old laugh. That's his action.
I see. So they're connected.
Yeah. And so what I do for those 4 digits is the first 2 are always the person, and the next 2 are always the action. So if you remember, the action he was doing was playing tennis, which was the 1-1.
So who's 1-1?
It's Andre Agassi. And if you think 1 and 1 is an A. It's the first letter of the alphabet. So I have AA. I thought of somebody with those initials, Andre Agassi.
It's fascinating. It is like learning another language.
It sounds like, oh man, I got to go through all these steps to figure out the number. Why don't I just memorize the number? But if you were to try to, for the listeners out there, to memorize that same 30-digit number without any system, you're going to get lost very, very quickly. And it's not your fault. It's just the way our brains are wired. You just can't really remember much more than 7 items unless you group them into bigger chunks. And if you're going to group them into bigger chunks, you need to have some kind of consolidating image for those groups. Just saying to yourself, 80, 11, 28, 84, you're going to lose those very quickly. So thinking in pictures is going to be able to last longer.
So you need to think in pictures. That's your way of turning abstract things like numbers or cards or symbols so that you can remember them. That increases the stickiness. And then you have the memory palace that is like a storage methodology.
File them all. Yeah. Keep them in order and keep them stored. So you know where to go find them after you imagine them.
And the memory palace has like a long history. This is not something new.
Yeah. I mean, you can kind of realize that by the name of it. Not the everyday person has a palace, but we're thinking of places rather. Memory places is maybe a better descriptor. But yeah, this was from back in the day, thousands of years ago. The Greeks in their big halls and actual palaces, they would use this to remember speeches or oral stories that they wanted to pass down. That's how this was stored.
How many did you start with and how many do you have now? Because that's part of your training and development, right? It's like you keep increasing and improving the tools in your head.
Correct. Yeah. So I have maybe over 100 different memory palaces, varying in sizes, depending on what, and I use certain ones for certain things. So certain ones go only for numbers. Some are only for cards. Some are for daily, day-to-day things. And you may think like, oh man, I don't know that many places, but you do.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I kind of feel like I don't know that many places, at least not well.
Yeah. Well, and it doesn't have to be a perfect replica in your mind. It just has to have a feel of it that you can navigate in your head. And I use childhood homes, apartments of girls I've dated, or, my extended family on my wife's side, their lake house, or even just like my commute to work or mountains I've climbed. I know even people who use, they're big golfers and they can imagine a whole 18-hole golf course. And that can be their memory palace. Sure. For me, that means nothing. All I see is green. But for an avid golfer that might have so many details that they're aware of, that it's perfect to store images.
Coming up, we talk about short-term versus long-term memory, tips for remembering people's names, becoming a memory entrepreneur, and more. But first, any place can be your memory palace, even just one room in your house.
And you can make them as big or small as you want, because even if you just take like your kitchen, for example, some people might use a memory palace as their whole house, and each room is its own place where you store something. So the kitchen might be its own thing. Put one image there. But you could also take your kitchen and make it a memory palace, and then imagine everything much, much smaller, right? Go all across your sink, into your coffee machine, into the fridge, and each corner or piece of that item can hold a piece of information. It's not limited by the space. You can always kind of shrink yourself and make use of the cramped space you have.
The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/103. If you're listening in your car or wherever you are, check the show notes if you want to learn more about Nelson or things mentioned in this episode. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Did you listen to Inspired Money bonus episode 6B? That was with Lynette Calfani-Cox, and this goes way back to September of 2017. It was entitled How to Protect Yourself After the Massive Equifax Hack. To refresh your memory, the Equifax breach affected 147 million Americans, and it included social security numbers, credit card details, and other very sensitive data. On July 22nd of 2019, the Federal Trade Commission announced that Equifax will pay up to $700 million to settle with state and federal regulators for failing to take reasonable cybersecurity steps to protect against the breach. While $700 million sounds like a lot, it doesn't actually amount to that much once it's hashed out between state and federal authorities and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Depending on when you listen to this, you can make a claim for your part of the settlement by January 22nd, 2020. Okay, so here's what you can do. First, I set up a link. It's at inspiredmoney.fm/Equifax that will forward you to the government's Federal Trade Commission webpage. Here you'll be able to check whether your information was part of the breach, and odds are that it was, which will make you eligible to file a claim. If your info was not breached, consider yourself lucky. Most of us are victims, so you'll be eligible for up to 10 years of free credit monitoring. There was previously a $125 cash option, but that appears to have been removed because they did not allocate enough cash for the high volume of people who wanted that option. You can also be compensated for time that you spent dealing with the breach. I recommend submitting a claim for 10 hours or less, where you must describe your actions that you took and the time that you spent doing those things, but no documentation is required. You can be compensated $25 per hour for up to 20 hours, but there are limited funds available, so your claim is likely to be reduced. If you want to claim more than the 10 hours, you have to describe your actions and also provide documents that show identity theft, fraud, or other misuse of your information. If you lost money due to the breach, like you lost money from unauthorized charges to your account, you had to pay for freezing or unfreezing your credit report, you had to pay for credit monitoring, or you had to pay an accountant or attorney, you can file a claim for cash reimbursement. Despite this being called the largest data breach settlement in U.S. history, the settlement is not commensurate with the size and scope of the data breach. That said, you might as well file your claim. And go back to the bonus episode 6B if you want to hear how to freeze your credit. I believe that you should do that. That's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. What's your biggest financial challenge right now? Do you have a money question? If you need help or you want to chat, go to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy to send me an email, or you can schedule a 15-minute call at inspiredmoney.fm/15. I'd love to hear from you. You're listening to Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong. Nelson, as you've explored memory, how does short-term memory versus long-term memory work? Because a lot of these tools, and if you're in competition, you're memorizing a series of numbers like you just did a few minutes ago, like that's pretty short-term memory, right? You don't want to remember that a month from now.
Right. And yeah, so there's a difference here. There's the techniques that we use and that I used just now is to get the information in your head quickly and for a reasonably long period of time, probably more than average if you were to just use no technique. Like I still remember the numbers. I'll probably still remember them till the end of the day, and most of it by tomorrow. Unless I do one thing, and that is to think about it. And that's review, right? If I go through these numbers in my head, I go through my memory palace a few times today and then a few times tomorrow. And over time, you don't have to review as much, but you keep reviewing over time. That's going to eventually lead into my long term. So then you might be asking, okay, well, what's the difference? Why am I using these crazy techniques? I can just study over and over again. Well, here's the cool thing is like I can look or hear that information once, encode it into my memory palace, and then I never have to physically touch the information again. And that's kind of where we get into that gimmick part. It's like, it's in my mind. All I have to do is just think about it, and I can make it last forever if I'd like it to.
Do you use like the memory palace to memorize phone numbers?
And this is a question I get a lot too, is like, yeah, you have these devices that will remember things for you, like our iPhones, smartphones. Do you memorize everything? And of course I don't. Are there things that I memorize from day-to-day stuff? Yes, of course. And actually numbers is one that I try to memorize. When I meet someone, I'll ask for their number, I'll memorize it, and I won't put it on my phone until the next day. And this is more of I like to exercise my mind than fill it up with stuff. That's because I train a lot, so I'm always filling it up with thousands of other things. So I'm not really keen to store phone numbers. But for a person out there who wants to learn this stuff, that's totally reasonable. You could file every single number you learn into a memory palace. That would be impressive, and it wouldn't be too difficult. I'm just not that disciplined for that, at least, because I'm always training other memory disciplines.
In competition, there are different events. And you do well in the names and faces.
Yep, that's one of my better ones these days. Yep.
How is that different from memorizing a series of numbers?
It's very similar in the sense that you come up with a picture and then you store it somewhere. The finer details are a little different just because a name can be anything, really. So there's a little more improv that goes into coming up with the image. You can't really have a system because you don't know what you're going to get. Unlike a number, there's only so many digits that can come at you, so you can be prepared for that. But a name, you kind of have to just be very flexible in what it reminds you of, or what it sounds like, or what it looks like when it's spelled out, and think of an image for that. In terms of storing it in a memory palace, that's not really a feasible option, because how big should your memory palace be to record all the names and faces of people you meet throughout your entire life? That seems a bit crazy, because some people you'll meet and never see again. So are they worth storing or even remembering? And how do you know that, right? You just kind of need to be ready for the case that some people might suddenly show up in your life again and you need to know their name every day suddenly.
Right, because the order is not as important.
The order is not important. Exactly. So the way you store the name or the picture is different. So what you would do is attach it to something about them. So some feature about them, maybe on their face, they have this mole on their cheek, right? That's always going to be with them. So you can imagine, instead of attaching it to the lobby desk like I did for those numbers, you can attach an image for the name to their mole. That way, when they come to you next time, if they ever do, they will bring that mole with them. And with that mole comes that picture. And the picture helps you remember the name.
I know that
you keep this. This is a very private thing. You keep to yourself. Yeah.
I was going to say that I know that it seems like the more outrageous it is, that's a good thing for your memory. It increases the chances that you'll remember. So if it's something that you think is funny or disgusting or violent,
you're taking advantage of what our brains are naturally drawn to. And those are emotionally charged things: laughter, violence, gore, sex. All those things are things that we naturally remember better than other things because they tap into our emotions. And that, again, another reason why memory is so human.
I know that you're a dad. Are you going to teach your child? Because it seems like this is something that we should be learning in school, but school doesn't teach us. I know that education, people criticize that, in school, it's all about memorizing facts instead of critical thinking or practical skills that you can apply to a job. But these memory techniques seem like that's what you should be learning in school, but we don't.
Right. And that baffles me to this day. And I'm constantly fighting to try to get this into schools. And there's incredible resistance, I think, because for whatever reason, more recently, in more recent years, there's this kind of idea that schools should not be memorizing. And I agree to an extent, but to learn things, you have to use your memory. There's no escaping that. And if these techniques can help you get the memorization part done quickly and move on to actual learning and understanding, I don't understand why there's resistance to it. So I'm always out there talking to schools and builders of curriculum to try to break this mindset that actually memory techniques would help schools have to memorize for less time. And so, yeah, as a dad, I'm more and more aware of this. And my kid's barely 11 months, but I'm already, introducing as best I can the idea of, kind of pictures and being as visual as possible. And as he gets to speak more and he's more vocal and can express himself, definitely go into that a little more in detail.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It seems like having a vivid and active imagination would translate well to these memory techniques.
And kids are all that. So, it's the perfect mixture for kids to really learn habits and how to memorize. It's a shame, too, because sometimes I have a hard time teaching adults some of this because they're like, I'm not that creative in my mind. I can't come up with these silly pictures. You could at one point. This was how you learned back in the day, right? Is to play and to think of silly things. And if you lose that, it's hard to tap back into. It's not impossible, of course. I had to learn that as well. But why not start at a young age and keep that as one of your memory tools? Can
we talk about like the business of monetizing your memory abilities?
It's not something I ever thought would become that, but here it is. I was a software engineer before. I was studying physics and computer science in university and getting my degrees in those. And I never thought that I'd be here teaching people memory. But it just kind of became that. I realized that people needed my help and were interested in my help. And slowly that led to one speaking gig here, another speaking gig there, a consulting agreement with this person or that company. And before you know it, I'm able to quit my actual job and do this full time.
Was that a difficult decision to make money-wise or not at all?
No, because I love it. I love teaching people something that they didn't previously know that makes them feel better about themselves. There's no greater feeling for me. There's been times where I wasn't quite sure where the money was going to come from or if it would be enough to be solo on this, but my passion just always shined through, and it's been worth it the whole time.
And can you make more money than you were previously as a software engineer?
Yeah. Here's the thing, though. I don't know if it's that simple. Hey, become a memory champion and boom, there's the money. It's definitely not like that. And there are other memory champions who have done nothing with their wins. I think personally, I have a good entrepreneurial mindset that has helped because I've come up with ideas that were so left field and happen to work for a particular brand or for an event that I just conjured up, and it ended up working out and led to other opportunities. I feel like when I'm in a corner, I always find a way out, and I've been doing this for almost 10 years now, and I feel like even when I think that the bucket is dry, there's nothing left, I come up with something new, and it actually leads to a whole new onslaught of opportunities. So it's definitely something that I personally have. I think that maybe not everybody has in terms of making a business out of seemingly nothing, but it seems to be working.
Yeah, your entrepreneurial mindset seems to be the separate but necessary skill, because you need to be creative. You don't know where the streams of income are going to come from. So you need to be a speaker. I know that you have a book, you have a YouTube channel, you can teach courses, you can do coaching. You have an app too?
Yeah, well, I helped design a training app a few years ago called Memory League. And it's a memory training software online platform where people can go and challenge each other and test themselves and stuff. It's a fun place to gamify memory and memory training. I highly recommend anybody listening to go check it out.
Yeah, I noticed in the Netflix memory games that they did focus a little bit towards the end. It reflected your business sense that you were saying that you hadn't trained as much as you maybe could have for the international competition, but you were thinking of it in terms of you're already a 4-time USA champion, and how much training would you need to put in relative to the benefit to your brand and business?
Exactly. Yeah. Like being 4-time US champion and maybe a 1-time world champion isn't going to make any difference. I don't think any difference at all if I was just 4-time US memory champion and 0-time world champion, right? But that doesn't mean winning for the sake of my business is the only thing that matters. Of course, I would love to be the best in the entire world and having earned that myself, but I love training the way I train. To train to win one of those championships would be a very difficult lifestyle, very time consuming in terms of the amount of prep and practice I'd have to do. I'd have to give up something somewhere. And at the moment, I can't do that financially. So
I know that you also have a nonprofit. Can you speak about that?
Of course, yeah. So I have this charity called Climb for Memory, where I raise money by climbing mountains around the world for Alzheimer's. And it started out where we were, I was alone climbing big mountains like Everest a few times and other peaks around the world to try to get people's attention so that they could donate. And then I could research where I could put that money to help further Alzheimer's research. And in more recent years, we're more of a team now, trying to create opportunities for people to join me on some of these climbs, kind of bucket list kind of things like Kilimanjaro or Everest Base Camp, Aconcagua, which is the highest peak in South America. Do those climbs while also, helping for this cause. That's something I love. I love bringing people along for the ride to experience these memorable experiences, right? To make more out of their lives, and at the same time, you're helping out people who are suffering from Alzheimer's.
It's a great cause, and I know that you're a CrossFit guy, so you really are always pushing yourself physically. You're doing these very difficult climbs and expeditions. You're pushing your memory. Why is it important that you're pushing yourself all the time?
I don't know. I feel horrible if I'm not doing anything that is pushing me further. Or pushing me along. It's I don't like to sit still. I don't like to. I don't know. Maybe that's a problem. I don't like
it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, exactly. Like as you told me at the beginning of this call, I'm on vacation right now, and here I am doing this call. I can't stop, and I like to always test what's possible.
Well, let me ask you this. I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
Well, that's a good question. It's actually kind of a very timely question that you asked me that, because one of my big things that I've tried to accomplish is to summit Mount Everest, and I haven't been able to. I've tried it 3 times, been very close, and I want to try again. And I'm often asking myself, why do I want to do this? Is it, part of it, people are fascinated by the mountain and, oh, wow, Everest, that's incredible, so successful if you get to the top. Or even what I've done so far, they say that's successful, but it doesn't feel successful to me yet. And I have this sneaking suspicion that I'll summit and still not feel the success. I'll be happy that I summited, right? That I succeeded there. But, that tells me that success is bigger than one thing, right? And so I'm constantly trying to figure that out. And maybe it comes back to what I was saying before, that as long as I'm pushing myself and having these mini succeeds, then that's what would be successful for me. I guess successful is looking back on these micro kind of gains that you've made and being happy that it's consistently being pushed.
I like that. I mean, to me, it sounds like it's always a moving target. That's one of the challenges. But I think that for you, it's like making an impact, because you seem to be doing that like many different layers.
Yeah. And I think I feel the most on track towards success when stuff I do translates to others also growing towards that success, right? I think they're strongly tied together.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story and some of your techniques with us today. Can you tell the Inspired Money listener where they can learn more and follow you?
Yeah, my YouTube channel, I'd say foremost. That's where I put a lot of my effort into creating videos about memory tips and kind of life hacks. And you can just search my name, Nelson Dellis, there, and you'll find my channel. So please subscribe. My website, nelsondellis.com. You can email me, reach out if you want to train or have me as your coach or hire me for an event, a speaking gig kind of thing. I'm open to all sorts of things.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Nelson. So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? The memory techniques that Nelson talked about today, it does require a lot of time and effort. It's not easy. But I love that these techniques can be learned and can help you to train your brain with incredible outcomes. Do you want to try it? If you do, definitely check out Nelson's book. It's Remember It, the names of people you meet, all of your passwords, where you left your keys, and everything else you tend to forget. I asked Nelson for some recommendations after the interview, and he recommended these: Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Foer and Quantum Memory Power by Dominic O'Brien. I'll include these along with other helpful links in the show notes at inspiredmoney.fm/103. Thanks for joining me today. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment and takeaway, let me know by posting in the private Inspired Money Makers Facebook group at inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. The music you're listening to right now and all other music on today's show is by the amazing Jim Kimo West. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.